Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Standardbred Retraining vlog. Today I am taking Alfredo out on the road for his first road trip. I am meeting a friend down the street from me for a trail ride. This is a little bit brave for me. Usually I do my first ride off property with my horses. I try to go to an arena just because, like, I don't know, feels a little safer. But Alfredo really likes the trails. Plus, you know, we won't know until we actually go out and give it a try, but I suspect he's going to travel really nicely. My plan is to go out on the trails later today in the evening. But before we go, I want to practice trailer loading and unloading and tying to the trailer. Now, normally I must admit, I would have done this type of homework, like practicing loading and standing tied, way before I planned the trail ride. Like, this is a case of do as I say, not as I do. So, like, if you're following along, you want to train a standardbred for the very first time, like, it's much better to do the trailer loading practice and tying practice on a different day to make for sure that your horse is going to behave for it. But I think Fredo's going to do great. I think this is going to take like 10 minutes or less, and we'll see what he does. As a generalization, you can count on standardbreds to load and trailer pretty well. The guy who shipped Fredo to me gave him an A+ for his travels, so I felt pretty confident in Fredo. I still wanted to make sure he would get on my trailer, which is a 2-horse straight load, and for some reason the ramp in the back has some horses giving it the hairy eyeball. But of course, Fredo did not hesitate, so I loaded him and unloaded him, and I did that a few times just to be sure, but I knew he was going to trailer well. I knew this before we even practiced. So the next step was to practice tying. A lot of standardbreds know how to cross tie, but not straight tie. I have practiced straight tying and ground tying with Fredo, but I still wanted to make sure that we practiced on the trailer. He did great with this too. I actually left him tied and then went searching in my tack room, and he didn't even flinch when I unearthed a dead mouse and let out a very loud shriek. You good, Betty? So, in a turn of events that was entirely unsurprising other than the dead mouse that I found in my trailer, of course he loads perfectly. So now I'm just gonna go turn him back out for the rest of the day and clean out the dead mouse, fill up my water, and get ready to go. Okay, we're getting ready to head out for our ride. Of course, Fredo loaded like a champ because why wouldn't he? After all the practice that he didn't need. Just gonna do my final checks. All right, horse, good. Bridle, saddle pad, girth, and spares. You can't see even what I'm showing you. All right, we got hoof boots, we got fly spray. What more could a girl need? So here we are unloading at my friend's farm, and I would say this is where I made probably my only true mistake of this outing. I asked my friend to meet me down at the road so that I didn't have to worry about turning around in the driveway, but like the timing was bad when she ended up coming down her driveway. I was in the middle of putting the saddle on Fredo, and then her other gelding started calling out, which got everyone a little bit stirred up. And I hadn't tied him to the trailer because we're on a road, and even though it was quiet, there was some traffic, so I didn't want to leave him unattended on the back of the trailer. Anyway, as I was tacking him up, she came down the hill on her horse, and Fredo just kind of like stepped to the side, but the saddle, which was not all the way on, just slid off the side and hit the pavement. Fortunately, my saddle is no worse for the wear, and we immediately got to test out Larry, as that's her horse's name, Larry, as the babysitter, and my friend Kelsey graciously held Fredo for me while I finished tacking him up. So in hindsight, I wish I'd, you know, maybe brought Fredo up to the barn to tack him up in the cross ties, but oh well, no harm, no foul. That was probably our only major hiccup of the day. When I went to get on, I asked Kelsey to hold him for me because I just didn't think after all of the hubbub and hullabaloo that he would want to stand still for me to mount. But he actually stood perfectly while I went to get on, and you know, he got a little bit antsy, but he stood patiently waiting for Kelsey to get on Larry as well, and then we started on our ride. From there, things really only got better. Fredo definitely started out a little bit anxious, but there wasn't really anything in particular that I could complain about. He was maybe walking a little bit fast, and I could feel that he was on edge, but he didn't really spook at anything, and he didn't really offer to jig or trot, or he didn't really do anything. Fredo has a much bigger walk than Larry, our little lead babysitter pony, so we kind of led the way, even though I've never been to the park before, so I had no idea where I was going. And of course, Fredo has never been to this park before, and he also had no idea where we were going. But we were just kind of, you know, going on vibes, and it worked.
Got it.
Kelsey and Larry are really great trail riding partners. Kelsey's other horse is a spunky thoroughbred, and so she's very keenly aware of what kinds of things might upset a horse that's not super settled out on the trails, and she was always very mindful of Fredo and communicated what she wanted to do, like if she was going to trot up next to us or trot ahead or just go somewhere that maybe it was going to be spooky coming up. She always made sure that she let us know, which was super valuable to have that out on Fredo's first trail ride. I will say throughout the ride there were a few things that actually did bother Fredo. One was benches. He just didn't seem to like them. Like, he wasn't spooking at them or anything, but I could feel him eyeing them suspiciously. And this beautiful park did have a handful of benches. Fredo didn't seem to like any of them when we walked by. The other thing he really didn't like, and again, kind of harmless, but was the dogs in the distance on the hillside. We'd come across a couple of people with dogs and like just passing them close up, and that didn't bother him really. I mean, he kept an eye on them, but when he would see the dog on the hillside in the distance, he always wanted to like stop and look at it. I didn't mind though, because if that's a spook, you know, if you can even call it that, that's very chill and very respectful, and there was a lot for him to take in that day, and so I wanted to make sure that I gave him a chance to process everything so that he had a really good experience and that he will hopefully grow to really love trail riding. For his part, Fredo was completely unbothered by just about everything else. Like I said, he definitely felt on edge and a little bit bewildered by some parts of the experience at first. But whenever Kelsey and Larry trotted up behind him to catch up, he really didn't mind that. He was perfectly happy to lead or to follow for the entire ride as long as he got to maintain his big forward walk. There were a few water crossings during the ride, and Fredo bravely trucked right through the first water after getting the lead from Larry. The water was like, you know, flowing deep enough, and the footing was pretty rocky, like it actually was just rocks. So it wasn't the easiest crossing for his very first water, but Fredo was ready for it. You know, we continued on our ride, and there's actually cross-country jumps in this field, and there's a water element like for a event also at the park, and so we went over to the water complex and just hung out for a little bit. I was kind of hoping that Fredo would like that water, but Larry didn't like that water, and Fredo agreed with Larry, and you know, without the lead, I didn't really want to belabor the point because I was pretty sure I could get Fredo into the water, but not without getting out and getting in myself. And I didn't want to get my boots wet. So we just kind of piddled around the outside of the water for a bit while Larry grazed, and this is where Fredo really seemed to find his confidence. We were just kind of walking around the outside of the pond, this little circle, and he could walk as forward as he wanted to without getting away from Larry, and I didn't have to keep half-halting him to let Larry catch up. And so kind of just letting him open up his stride, letting him breathe and figure it out was really nice for him. So we hung out around there. We did the little mini up banks and down banks that were around the outside of the water. And after these pond laps, Fredo was just feeling himself. Like, he felt good. He felt like he knew what he was doing. He felt really brave. So we decided to start like picking up the pace of our trail a little bit. And we actually went in, we were gonna do like a really big trot up the hill, and then of course we found a dog without a person. So we decided to try to go around and find a different route, which was fun because we didn't quite know that path, but eventually we found our way out, and then we decided to start trotting again. Only this time, it turned out when Larry just wanted to trot along, it was pretty much Fredo's walk speed. So we were doing a little bit of walking, a little bit of trotting, but again, it just was really nice because I could feel Fredo had finally found his confidence. On our way back home, we did have to do that same water again, and I will say, Fredo seemed a lot more skeptical this time. I really didn't want to get off and walk through this water again when it came at boots dry, but water is a fairly scary ask for a new trail horse, and you know, the last thing I want to do is scare my horse when he's already scared. So Kelsey and Larry had already crossed the water, but had turned back, like facing us to watch us. So I asked Kelsey and Larry to turn around and just start walking towards home to see if, you know, them actually deserting him was going to give Fredo the push that he needed.
If you turn Larry away and start walking.
So to get my horse into the water, what I try to do is I sit quietly, I keep his nose pointed in the right direction, and I just gently ask him to walk forward, and eventually my quiet nudging, mostly combined with his new bestie Larry leaving him in the dust, was enough to convince him to get right in that water. And it ended up being just enough motivation for Fredo to walk right through the water. So for the remainder of the trip home, Fredo was really slowed down and comfortable for the walk. I thought maybe there was a chance he was just tired, but I do think a part of him had just really settled and he was feeling confident and comfortable and didn't have that same adrenaline that was fueling his super forward walk that we had at the beginning. But also that park is super hilly, so he was also probably tired. Anyway, my GoPro died just as we were getting back, but sweet little Fredo untacked and loaded uneventfully. My saddle did not touch the pavement again, and he popped right back in the trailer for our trip home. And I had such a great time, I'm planning to take him out for another trail ride again soon.
All right, what a delightful gentleman for his very first trail ride. Fredo was a superstar. Didn't go too hard, but it was very hilly, and we were out on the trails for close to an hour and a half, maybe. You were so cute. You were so perfect. By the time we got back, it was like being on a super seasoned, wonderful trail horse. So he had the best babysitter and a very courteous rider on that babysitter, which really helps, I think, get them used to whatever. Okay, so I packed his feet, I hosed his legs, I poulticed his back, and this was all probably overkill, but I wanted to make sure he's as comfortable and happy as he can be. Well, I hope he enjoys whatever he does next. I'm gonna turn him out, let him graze, let him drink, and then bring him back in a couple of hours for his dinner. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more Fredo content. Bye.